Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Stephen LeDrew. We are in the middle of an election campaign. We hear a lot from politicians, but perhaps, and I believe sometimes we should hear from people who are not politicians, because this could be, I think it is, a big election for Canada. It's seminal. Whoever wins, what issues are decided, could create the Canada of the next few generations. So before I introduce my guest, I want to take you back 3 years. There was a retired Lieutenant-General delivered a speech in Ottawa before all, as I call them, the mucky mucks. And virtually all the mucky mucks said, this is outrageous. This can't be true. Because this gentleman stood up and said what he thinks is going wrong with Canada. Well, that speech ended up with this book, In Defense of Canada. He had many, many articles in the National Post, Post Media, and other sources. And he joins me today. Retired Lieutenant-General Michel Maisonneuve, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Merci beaucoup, Stephen. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. So you wrote this book, In Defense of Canada. You delivered that speech, which people still talk. Some people in Ottawa still talk to me. And they still talk about that speech. Because they said you had a lot of nerves standing in front of justices and retired armed forces personnel, politicians, saying, things are going wrong in Canada. That's something that virtually the rest of Canada recognized, but the bubble did not. Why don't you tell the audience right now the essence of your speech?
Well, in large part, I had been unhappy with the state of our country for, probably for, certainly more than 10 years. And I'd thought, we're going in the wrong direction, and especially since 2015, frankly. Things like the fact that we were being called a post-national state with no culture, the fact that our immigration was out of control, the government was living way beyond its means. I'm not an economist, but I'm just a Canadian, and I just think that, if I did that with my own budget, we'd be in deep trouble. So I went all the way through that. And of course, I did talk about the armed forces. I talked about the veterans also. Those are two topics, obviously, that I know something about.
Right.
And beyond that, though, I said, in spite of that, Canada we're not achieving our potential. And I talked about some of those things we'd done in the past, some of the heroes we had. But if you're opposed to...
Let's talk about that in the past, because I've read your book, and most people do not know that we had one of the largest navies in the world.
Well, yes, after the Second World War, we had the third largest navy in the world, and we had the fourth largest air force in the world. We had 1 million men, mostly, under the flag, in the service at that point. So, and of course, standing toe-to-toe with our side-by-side, I should say, with our allies, we had delivered Europe. We had actually liberated it. And so...
And again, people don't know that. I remember a few years ago, I took 4 of my children, and I was delivering a speech in France. We went to a hotel on the coast of France, up from Vimy. We had dinner. There I am, late at night, 4 kids. And I went to pay the bill. The gentleman said there was no bill. It's paid. And I said, no, I'll pay. And he said, no. He said, that man who just walked out asked if you were from Canada. And I told him I knew you were. He said, here it is. So that's 50 years later.
Yeah.
Just a simple person said, we are so grateful to Canadians. Yeah. But most Canadians don't know the role that Canada played.
Well, and and that's the point, is that our place in the world has really diminished, certainly in the last 20 years. And I wrote the book because, I use kind of personal examples of where I was in different scenarios and so on, where where Canada, I could say, oh my God, Canada, matters today. It really does matter. But I think since then...
The past tense.
The past tense, yes. Yeah. It mattered in those days.
Right.
And nowadays, well, we've lost our influence in the world, with NATO particularly. We're not even consulted anymore. We're not even thought about, actually. And you look at some of the, the AUKUS alliance of, Australia and the US and the UK. We should be part of that. We are a huge Pacific nation as well as Atlantic nation, and so these are things where we're just totally put off to the side. And I believe it's because of some of the policies and some of the wrong focus that we've had, like our climate. Our resources are being sacrificed, I say, at the altar of climate change. When you really think about it, we have the greatest resources in the world, in not just in oil and gas, but in minerals and uranium and so forth. And we're just not achieving that potential that could bring us to be a superpower that way.
Good time for a break. And when we come back with retired Lieutenant-General Maisonneuve, we are going to be talking about what changes. You've described how good it was. We're going to see what we can do to make it great again. Right back after this.